Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's Danny Limelight. And I need all of you to subscribe to According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and all other platforms.
What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to my friend, a good brother to us all. He is a Jacques Machado black belt, a level 2 instructor for the Wim Hof method. He is the one and only Joey Hauss. Joey, what's going on?
Not much. I appreciate the introduction. I am actually a brown belt under.
You are a brown belt.
I am a brown belt. That's all right. We'll manifest that. But yeah, just a brown belt so far. Also love that introduction, like the little intro thing, because we were just talking backstage, and then when you went live, there was a whole thing, and man, I love that. That was awesome.
It becomes a thing. It definitely becomes a thing. Which, I mean, geez, man. Like, talk about the things that you're into. Like, you do a lot of things, and you do a lot of things well, and a proficiency, right? You talk about the brown belt in Jacques Machado, right? Like, that's proficiency, right? The Wim Hof method, level 2 instructor, that's proficiency.
Sure,
and all the things that you do it with like such vigor and such life. It's like we were kind of talking off air about your life condition. It's just like so high.
Yeah, man. Like we were talking backstage. It's like that following your passions, whatever your excitement is. And I do think there's something to you follow it and it brings out a version of yourself. There's something about doing a thing that you're actually excited and interested in. And it just, you do it better. You can't not do it better when you're actually fully engaged, fully excited. And I feel like there's things that we've learned outside of just like in doing jujitsu, where it is kind of like a classroom and like instruction. You're learning from an instructor, you're actively doing it. But because we've chosen it, we do it better. Like I was a terrible student in high school, college, and all that. Yeah, awful. Like D's, F's, always doing summer school, always having to go back. And like I understood the subject matter, but I wasn't engaged. It wasn't anything like about it that brought any high excitement to me. But when it came time to play football or to wrestle, I gave that my all. I was always in the weight room. I was always training. All right, how can I do more? All right, when I go home, I'm going to run. I'm going to study techniques. How could I get better at this? And then, like in later life, we were deciding to go to things like jujitsu and, okay, I'm going to give that my all. I'm going to study when I'm not there. And whatever it is that just brings out that excited version of yourself, you're always going to do it better. You're always going to bring that extra element that's going to allow you to improve.
No, 100%. Which I didn't know about you. I didn't know that you played football before. And was that kind of like the catalyst of because?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, was it the catalyst to maybe to join jiu-jitsu? Was there a point where maybe like the gridiron kind of fell by the wayside?
Kind of. So what happened was I played football and wrestled in high school. My brother had wrestled, and so like that was what interested me in that. And like I was really interested in playing football. So like the wrestling was like, all right, I'll wrestle and it's gonna make me better at football. And I was obsessed. I was just trying, like I was 240 pounds by my senior year, but like yoked. I was just always in the weight room. There were classes in my school that were designed to make you like, all right, we have these support periods where you can go to, you can do extra homework, study for the tests. And I was like, no, I'm just going to be in the weight room. And that's all I was, because I was just, all right, I'm going to be as big and strong as possible for football. But the unfortunate thing was my high school had a terrible team. I went to Calabasas High School, and I guess right now they actually got a good team. But like when I was there, terrible. We were 2 games shy of the state record for longest losing streak. So my junior and senior year, we started that. We lost all of our games my junior and senior year. But it was like only me and like 2 other people really gave a shit about really. And like one of the guys that really gave a shit ended up playing on a couple of practice teams in the NFL. The other guy was played professionally arena football, And then I ended up, going this wrestling jiu-jitsu route. But like 3 people that really cared will not carry a team. And we lost all those games. But while I was wrestling, like the work I put in, that would be like, I put in work and I'm winning a lot of my matches. And like the team was better, but I was like, okay, I now see that I want to do something that when I put in the work, I will have results. I don't need to depend on a bunch of other people that I don't really know or anything like that. So I was going to play football in college. That was my initial plan. But I was like, you know what? I love wrestling so much more. I'm going to do that instead. So I wrestled at Moore Park College under Paul Keesaw, was an NCAA national champion. And just like totally, like it was like just some decision made in my senior year that I was just like, I'm going to wrestle instead. Wrestling is way more a better investment of my time and energy than playing football. And then that I feel is what was the real catalyst of what eventually then led me to jiu-jitsu, because here was me wrestling. And then once you're done in college, the problem with wrestling is that, if you're not going to wrestle in college after high school, you're done. If you're not going to go to the Olympics after college, that's it. You don't get there's no real organized club wrestling, where jiu-jitsu is kind of like wrestling and kind of better because you can do more stuff. And also the idea of tapping someone out's a little more exciting.
Yeah.
And then when you learn that in jiu-jitsu, there are people that can fight off your back, the whole point of wrestling is to put someone on their back kind of becomes, it feels a little pointless, at least for me, once you have that information of, if I put someone on their back, they can still throw these like triangle chokes. I'm not really subduing them. So maybe I'll play this jiu-jitsu thing. It allows me to incorporate that thing that wrestling really brought out of me, and I get to tap people out instead of just put them on their back. So yeah, that was the real catalyst.
Well, it's funny, even with the football kind of scenario, right? Like the fact how motivated, and this kind of speaks to the character that you have, right? That exudes from you, is even like you were undeterred, right? Like, or like almost the second most losing record in in a particular instance of history and everything like that. But that didn't stop you. You had every reason to the je ne sais quoi of tapping out in football, not going to the gym, not being as like ardent as you were to kind of better your athletic acumen for this sport, and in which the sport you kind of the team is kind of losing it, right? And but like you remained undeterred. It's that unforshakable kind of, I don't know, will to win, even within yourself, to almost like a horse with blinders, like block out everything else and just focus on yourself.
Yeah, and I can also see like the naivete of it all, because like our team was bad, like we kept losing it, but every game my thing is like, all right, this is the one, guys, this is the one that we're going to turn it around. Like we've lost all of our games for a year and a half, and now we're playing like the number 1 ranked team in league. Everyone else is like, yeah, they're going to destroy us. I'm like, nah, guys, this is the one. This is the one where we turn it around. This is the one that movies are made out of.
Yeah.
The team that's awful, that's lost all these games, turns it around, beats the team expected to win. This is the one, guys. And I was just getting hit with that every game, because like on some level, when we started losing, for other people, it became that expectation. Like, yeah, well, we lost. Like, where's the party at? But I remember like being devastated every loss. And like, at some point, like even thinking like, shouldn't you like recognize this by now? Shouldn't this like not hit you in a way where like, yeah, this is a shitty team. We lose games. That's what we do. But it still hit me at my core every time. And yeah, like there was, I guess like what I do see now is that, yeah, like even when things are tough, I do recognize an aspect of myself that like, no, this is where it's going to get turned around. And seeing that has played off very well in my life overall, but at least in that little bracketed instance, I can see that it was a little bit ridiculous. That positive mindset.
Well, hindsight is always 20/20, right? Like you never know, and like you kind of like, especially if you're evolving, right? As a human, your spirit, your consciousness, right? You go through phases of evolution where when you look back, it's not kind, but you almost needed such things to kind of propel you to where you are now, because everybody, you see across social media and in the world that positive vibes only and what have you. Well, the thing about it, if you don't know about the lotus flower, right? Lotus flower, prettiest damn flower in the swamp. It's damn near breathtaking, but also it is it's life, right? As it blooms, it dies, right? It
Mm.
gives life to others, and you don't get a pretty lotus flower that you're gonna look and gawk at and behold in clean water. No, you need the fucking shit, man. So that
Right.
positive vibes only, I get to an extent, but you need the shit to propel you and make you realize, like, hey, when shit is good, let me fucking ride with this thing. Let me
Yeah.
improve it.
Yeah. And like I do notice that, like, like in the spiritual personal development community, right? We even have a term for it, spiritual bypassing, the people that will only like, oh, like it's all love and light, but like they're not addressing real problems of their lives. And then with that kind of love or light, they're just overlooking things like, no, you need to be angry right now. Like for you, anger will be growth. If you can actually turn around and tell that person to fuck off,
Yeah.
man, like that's growth for you. But if you're like, man, like that person just, if someone just like cuts you in line somewhere and you're just like, oh, well, it's all love and light, I won't say anything. No, like you're just like not addressing a part of yourself that should be like, hey, excuse me, like that's standing up for yourself. But a lot of people, you're right, like they block that with love and light. And it happens right the two different ways of either like your whole life, you're not really facing any adversity and trying to do that, and you're not really growing, or like these little things of like, all right, I'll let it pass, like maybe this, that, or the other. But when you're like, the people that I find that are the best at avoiding fights are actual fighters that like someone does something to them, it comes from an energetic place of like, all right, man, like you're good, I don't want any trouble, because if they're not like really confronted, they're in their body, they know, oh, I would destroy this person, I just do not need to destroy this person.
Yeah.
But with like a lot of other people's, it's like, well, like the reason was like it wouldn't have been worth it. Like, no, you didn't want to face a thing within yourself. And so it is important to have these little moments of adversity, because then like your positive mindset is actually tested. Of if you lose all these games, and you're still optimistic about the next one, like, hey, like that's going to bring you somewhere, I think.
Yeah.
But it's tough. You have to actually go through, you got to lose that game. You got to lose that game where, if you come from just constantly winning and you're just like there riding the sidelines and you're just expecting winning. Like there's, I was just listening to the Dan Gable podcast on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Oh, yeah.
He talked about, because he was undefeated in high school. He was undefeated in college up until his very last match that he ended up losing, right? It's like this crazy, like 150-1, which was the very last one. But then he talked about he needed that loss. That loss was his catalyst to his Olympic, the way how he performed there. And like he's like, if I didn't lose that match, I would not have become that Olympic gold medalist, because that's what really pushed me to then go to that next level. And then he talked about the guy that beat him. He said that's what actually destroyed him, winning that match against Dan Gable, because he wanted that Olympic gold medal dream. But like for him, just in his body, he wasn't able to overcome like, oh, like I beat Dan Gable. Like it's good enough. I don't need to do anything else. And so it's like, it's just really interesting to see like that adversity sometimes is the catalyst to, okay, I'm going to now take this to the next level.
No, 100%. I mean, you see it, like the outliers, right? Outliers, right? What if Ronda Rousey had placed higher than bronze in her Olympic, kind of career, right? What if DC hadn't gotten fourth, right? Daniel Cormier hadn't gotten fourth. Would he become a double champion in the UFC? I don't know. And it's one of those, like, when you leave, kind of stuff on the table, kind of, again, it's variables. Yeah, those are fun. Those are fun little wormholes to go down.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. And I am like, I'm like the fact that I lost all those games in football. It's like, it was almost like life showing me, yeah, football isn't the thing. You don't want to be playing football all through college either. And then like now later in life, learning about CTE and all that. You
Yes.
know what? I did my 4 years in high school. Wrestling, on the other hand, right? You're not inflicting damage, but then like I see that as the thing that, oh, like my practices in college were the things that then prepared me for the Marines, and that being the thing that, prepared me for jiu-jitsu competition, and then this personal development world that I'm currently in, teaching these different things. And so, yeah, like that adversity of doing so bad in football was like, all right, we didn't get those wins that we wanted in high school. Let's try for some wins in college. And then like, that's kind of what propelled just new things as well. Like, oh, I'm going to wrestle instead. That's a way more fun thing where, as I mentioned before, in high school, losing all the games, but then like, okay, I can win some stuff in wrestling. I'll do that in college instead. And then just like really learning, oh, practices in college wrestling are crazy intense.
Crazy.
I don't think like that I would have ever experienced that with football. I would have gotten big, strong, and whatever, but like that extra bit that that wrestling taught me really was the thing that I feel like, just as a person, what I've always been seeking in my life was like, oh yeah, that was the right move. That was the right move to not play football, to endure even more wrestling in college. And so definitely happy that, yeah, losing those games, like in hindsight, it is like, man, thank God we lost all those football games.
No, 100%. Now, you competed in college as a wrestler, right? And was there a point where maybe like your career was ending? Were you trying to find yourself again, football to wrestling, athletic endeavor? But
Yeah.
once like the college, once like you were saying, there aren't a lot of options if you're not going to the Olympics, right? That's
Yeah.
like the pinnacle, and even that you're not going to get paid. Or I mean, like Kurt Angle talks about it, like and like he got this money in the WWE, and it's
Yeah.
amazing that he did, right? But like where like in terms of like you where were you where you couldn't like was there a point after wrestling that you couldn't express yourself physically?
100%. And so I was wrestling in college. And then at that point, I was an assistant manager at Blockbuster, right? That was what I was doing like during my time in between, like, wrestling. I was like, I worked with my dad selling shoes, but then right after that, I was an assistant manager at a Blockbuster. I was 21 years old, and they were right about to promote me to manager. And so at that point, being 21 years old, I was about to make, I think it was like $50,000 a year with like benefits. Yeah. And for a 21-year-old, I was
Yeah.
like, fuck, like this is how people get
Yes.
stuck in what they're doing, because like if I make $50,000 a year, I'm not going to know how to walk away from this job. I don't want to be a manager at Blockbuster. And it was just like, yeah, like at that point, like wrestling had just ended. And now I'm like, I have no other avenues that I see in front of me. And like, am I just going to be a manager at Blockbuster? So I was like, that's when I decided to join the Marines. I was like, I need to keep challenging myself physically, mentally, emotionally. This Blockbuster thing isn't it. So like them like this is like an interesting thing. Them offering me the job of manager was the wake up call of, oh, I have to get out of here because I do not want to get stuck here. And so that's when I joined the Marines. But like I joined as a reservist, so I went to boot camp, I went to School of Infantry, but then instead of like living at my unit, I just show up 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year, and like hope I don't get deployed or anything like that. And so during that time is then when I also really discovered jiu-jitsu. I'd kind of dabbled in it while I was wrestling. I had good friends like Marco Cruzat, who would like, they'd come into like, him, a couple other people would come into our practices because they were just jiu-jitsu guys. And so they'd want to work on their wrestling for their jiu-jitsu. And every once in a while, we'd be like, all right, let's do some jiu-jitsu with these guys. And some of them were just like not really athletic people at all, but they were just people that did jujitsu. And I remember a lot of us were, as wrestlers build your body a certain way. If you're just in a wrestling room, always sprints, long distance runs, drills, wrestling weights, it builds you in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm not saying like Mark, but like some of the other guys that would come in, like they're not like athlete looking people at all.
Right.
We'd be able to ragdoll them as far as wrestling goes. But then as soon as we were on the mats, we'd like all of a sudden we'd be getting choked and getting put in arm bars. And it was like, what the hell? Like, how does this guy catching me in this? That doesn't make any sense. And so we'd come to some open mats and train a little bit. But then right after I got done with boot camp, School of Infantry, really just looking for ways to keep myself active, I discovered, I can just do jujitsu. At that time it was like jujitsu MMA, but then like it was really jujitsu was the thing that I was like, okay, like as much as I loved wrestling, I really get to still put this outlet into this new thing in a way that, I get to submit people instead of pinning them. And so really just became obsessed with that. I was like, all right, this is it. Because as we mentioned before, there's no outlet for wrestlers after wrestling. It's just like, oh, you're done wrestling. You're gonna be a fighter. You're gonna go in the Olympics. Well, good luck to you in the rest of your life. But at least now it is like, I can see that I can do this until my body decides to stop working. I can be a 90-year-old man coming to class. Yeah. We have men well into their 70s that come to the academy, and that like you can tell it's definitely keeping them young, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And so it's exciting to see, all right, I found a sport that's also a lot easier on the body than wrestling is. Wrestling is a grind. It does down your body very intensely, much quicker than jiu-jitsu does. Like the idea of a person actively doing wrestling into their 50s is ridiculous. Like it doesn't happen. Your body is too just destroyed. But jiu-jitsu, you can do it a little bit more gently, and you can keep it going for a really long time.
Which, I mean, you have this wrestling background, right? So was Marco kind of the catalyst to kind of get you into the first? Okay.
He was the first person that I met that was doing jiu-jitsu a lot, that came to our wrestling practices. And so, we built a friendship, and he was the person that brought me into jiu-jitsu initially. That is correct.
And what did you go to Jacques Machado's academy straight away, or was there?
No. So when I was doing open mats, it was like at different places in Simi Valley. And then when I first started training, it was at Big John McCarthy's gym out in Santa Clarita. I actually joined the fight team for a little bit, but that was like, it was there during those practices because of also like before all this, I decided to take on an MMA fight against a guy who was like about to be a professional. I was like, all right, well, I'm a wrestler, so that's going to really help. And then I got a pretty big wake-up call. And so I was like, all right, well, then I'll just join this fight team over here, because I was doing all the classes, meeting all the guys. And they had like good guys over there. Vince Pichel, who's currently in the UFC. There was another guy, Leonidas, who was on the Ultimate Fighter show as well.
Yeah, Joe.
Yeah. They had like some really like Brian Peterson, amazing coach. And so I decided to join the fight team there. But at that time, it was like I was interested in fighting MMA, but like I'm not trying to be an MMA fighter. And then it was during those practices, I was like, oh, you cannot like fight MMA without the intention of being an MMA fighter, because you're going to encounter someone who's, my whole life is being an MMA fighter. I'm hungry and I'm going to tear your head off. Yep. And so I learned that pretty quickly. And so I stuck with it for a little bit, but I'm like, I'm not going to be an MMA fighter. So me consistently trying to fight MMA is ridiculous. And so that's when I just did, stuck with only jiu-jitsu. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to train this, because I wasn't even trying to be a jiu-jitsu like competitor or anything like that. Sure, if there's a local tournament, I would compete at these things. But I loved training. I just loved going to the gym and working my body. And so I was like, all right, this MMA thing isn't going to be the path. Maybe I'll just train jiu-jitsu and just be a little bit more casual with it. And then from there, everything did start to take off. So Big John McCarthy's was the first gym I trained at. And there was a lot of Jean-Jacques Machado black belts that actually taught there. Alicia was there, and there was like a couple others that actually got their black belts from Jean-Jacques. And so then when I was too many things going on in my life, so I didn't even live in Santa Clarita, but I was traveling up there all the time to train, and like multiple times a day. And then I was going to school in Santa Monica, and so then I went to street sports in Santa Monica with under Hanato Magno, also a Jean-Jacques Machado black belt. Loved it there, but then other things going on in my life, and then I ended up moving to Hollywood. And when I was there, Legends, which was 10th Planet HQ at the time,
yes,
I was like, oh, like I love Eddie Bravo. I've seen all of his videos. I'll just train under him. And so then I went to Legends, trained under Eddie for a little bit. Then he moved his school to Burbank, so I just started going to Burbank. And then that became too much of a back and forth. And then I moved in with Eric Medina, who's my best friend, who is a black belt under Jean-Jacques. And so he was just like, hey, man, like just train with me at Jean-Jacques. Like we'll just be able to carpool. And then I also remember like coming to the academy just to check it out, training with Jean-Jacques, and the way that he trained, because of I was a wrestler. Like even when I was a white belt, blue belt, I would give like at least you as a black belt, you would have to put in an effort to tap me out because I just still had that wrestling aggro like ability to me. But Jean-Jacques just I felt like a child playing with like their dad. It was just like he would do whatever the hell he wanted with me, putting no effort into it. And I was like, oh, like when I train with people, that's what I want them to feel. I don't want to like have to go all out on them. I want to just be able to like flow and then have them just feel like I'm overwhelmed and can't do anything. And so like, this is the guy I got to learn from. And so that's how I ended up at Jean-Jacques.
That's amazing. And shout out to Eric Medina. I love that guy. He's just tremendous. And I mean, yeah, since the last time I spoke to him, he basically got promoted to black belt. So
well deserved.
Tremendous. Yeah, absolutely. Which is funny because so theoretically, I used to live for about 5 years' time on Reseda and Irwin at this apartments called the Tarzana 5, right?
I was at Wanda, so yeah.
See, there you go. So actually, because there's 5 lots on the 5 apartments on the lot, like buildings and what have you. And what essentially happened is I lived the closest to the little shopping center that's by the Orange Line, right? Mm-hmm. That's in line with
Oxnard.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely, right? So the funny thing is, never went in because I was intimidated, right? Heck, I even moved to Bakersfield to be my first jiu-jitsu school was under Matt Baker and his wife Jill. Yeah, absolutely. Who are husband and wife, Jean-Jacques Machado black belts, right? But I was so intimidated. And I think I know I was there the day that Jill got her black belt when Jean-Jacques came and Jay Sabalos came to teach a seminar. And man, I was just so nervy. Now, obviously, you've had a wrestling career. You've had things happen and trained at other schools. You've been in the kind of auspices of the great Eddie Bravo. He's great. Anybody that tells you different, don't know.
Love
you don't know. Yeah, but now you're stepping into the place that he was a student, where he earned his black belt. Was there any intimidation there?
No, I mean, because of I don't know, something about just I just loved training. I would go in there because of I was confident in what I was able to do as a grappler, and also at that time I was never trying to be a competitor. I was just a person that loved jiu-jitsu and wanted to learn good jiu-jitsu. So for me, it was I'll just come into this place and learn. And to be honest, I don't even still to this day, I don't really like the gi. I only continually train in it because I get to be around such amazing people, get to train directly under Jean-Jacques. And so I'm all right, I'll put this thing on every day just so I can learn from this person because that's what I want to do. But there was no intimidation there. But just being there, it is. It's when Eddie was there training for his Metamorphosis match. it was very cool because, yeah, we got to kind of be a part of that training camp. And then just to also watch a lot of the roles between Jean-Jacques and Eddie. And it was like, oh, okay. And like Jean-Jacques always got like the better of it. Eddie openly says that normally I don't spill any kind of insider trading camp things, but Eddie's also very adamant about it. And that was also like really cool to see as far as like the teacher-student dynamic, because to recognize Eddie as a master of jiu-jitsu, and then to see like the conversations between him and Jean-Jacques where he'd ask, basic questions like any student of their instructor. And a lot of times like Jean-Jacques would give what would seem like such a simple and basic, technique to escape a submission or to apply submission, and then to watch Eddie's mind get blown by it. I'm like, man, like here's a guy who's a master of this sport whose mind's getting blown by what looks like a technique that any white belt would be able to apply, but like looks like any technique that any white belt should probably know. But it was like that. It was like this and that's the beauty of it, like to learn all the simplicity of all of these things. Of like, oh yeah, to get out of that, just do this 1-2 motion. And it's like, oh, like all these years of jiu-jitsu, and like seeing a guy like Eddie like still not know that, that there's still so much to learn within the sport, right? This is definitely not, bringing Eddie down. Eddie's amazing. Eddie is a 100% a master. But like, that's what I'm saying is that it's so amazing to see a master like that learning from his master being, oh, whoa, like I didn't recognize that little detail in all my, 20, 30 years of training, it's wild. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of coaches, Coach Rob says Coach Rob approved all upon Canada. So thank you, Coach Rob. And over on Twitch, hello. So, I mean, talk about legends, because like, in terms of like that Matamoros fight camp, I mean, I remember just, the fact that Matamoros existed, because in my mind, like, I sit and daydream, even still to this day, what would like Eddie Bravo versus Carl Gotch look like? What is Catch versus BJJ versus Judo? And a lot of the same auspices of the original UFC, the concept-wise, right? But, it's just like this, like they play out in my mind almost like I guess it's the Spike TV show of yesteryear of like the Deadliest Warrior, where you kind of computer generate all of these matches 1,000 times and who wins by what and whatever, all the weapons of attack and what have you. So
that show was very underrated.
Yes, it was. And then you brought the gelatin that would bleed. Oh my God. Oh, bring that back, somebody. Jeez, that's amazing. But you got to see kind of that Jean-Jacques and Eddie Bravo, right? A clash of styles, but then not really, because a lot of a lot of Eddie's technique, we obviously was derived from Jean-Jacques directly, right? And then the wrestling, which kind of almost tips its hat to your origins, right? So, but so being in the room to see this happen at the highest level, man, that must have been cool to be a fly on the wall for that.
100%. And just like, to see, and as you said, like that, like Matamoros, this thing that was kind of ahead of its time, that really was the catalyst for a lot of the professional jiu-jitsu that we're seeing today. Say what you want about Matamoros, like everything we're seeing, EBI, Polaris, who's number one, all of these things, fight to win. Matamoros was the catalyst for all of it. And I do feel that the Eddie versus Hoyler rematch was definitely their pinnacle. And it's like they brought the match that everyone wanted to see, because the beauty of, Eddie versus Hoyler at Matamoros was that so many people thought it was just a fluke, that here was Eddie, a brown belt at the time, defeating Hoyler Gracie, legend of the sport. Yeah, a Gracie. But also like Hoyler, who had won all the other ADCCs beforehand, and just a total legend. And of course, like jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, just like boxing does have a puncher's chance of a knockout. While it's definitely significantly less like that in jiu-jitsu, it exists. Anybody like at a certain skill level, it's possible. You can catch someone. And so like that was the story that was told, that Eddie got lucky and that he caught Hoyler just like unaware that Hoyler underestimated him. And then we got to see the rematch, and we got to see Eddie came up with a style of doing jiu-jitsu that was just very hard to figure out. It was so outside the norm that even when a master like Hoyler is confronted with it, it presents a lot of problems, and that it's a very confusing puzzle to figure out. But also just like, so Metamoris brought us that rematch that we've all been wanting to see forever. Probably at that point, like the biggest rematch that anyone in jiu-jitsu would have wanted to see. And then also just bringing like all the theatrics to the sport, because the truth was, like, at that point, the sport didn't really have anything, like any platform to be on. Like, yeah, like we all see that jiu-jitsu is super cool and that it's this fun, amazing thing, but presented in the right way, like it can be a very exciting thing just for a regular spectator to watch. And Metamoris was like the catalyst for EBI as well, which was, I do think EBI probably was the most spectator friendly of all kinds of jiu-jitsu. Because like, the rule set, because I remember, so I competed in EBI's 1 and 3.
Right.
And my mom came to watch, me compete, at EBI 1. And I lost in the first rounds to Lance Glynn. Lance Glynn, phenomenal grappler. But then, so I'm now out of the tournament. So now my mom's vested interest in being at this jiu-jitsu event at a nightclub in Hollywood is over. But by the time it ended, because of the finals were, it was Richie versus Gary Tonin, and then it was Gio versus Jeff Glover. And my mom, who has no interest in jiu-jitsu outside the fact that I compete in it, was at the edge of her seat, was like, oh my God, like him versus him and him versus him, because of all of them had submitted all of their opponents in regulation to get to the finals. So it was this like, oh my God, it's these people against each other. This is going to be amazing. And so to see that, Metamoris was the first thing that brought what I feel like a spectator-friendly approach to jiu-jitsu. Even if you're not into it, Metamoris was the catalyst for all of that.
No, 1,000%, 1,000%. And, as much as we love the sport and what have you, I feel like gym owners as well as practitioners, it's a rock and a hard place, because as a gym owner, you want to teach the art in the best way possible and what have you. But then you also want to keep the lights on. So you kind of have to, put some sizzle on the steak. Jim Ross from the WWE basically said it's all about an ass in every 18 inches, whether that's at home, in the arena, at a bar, watching it, what have you. That's what you're trying to do for the proliferation of the sport, of the actual promotion that is putting on the show. You got to get some of that back, and that the presentation, and that's one of the things that I almost miss most about going to different events and seeing the concept of whether it be jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, what have you, right? It's the convergence of all of these artists, and you get to see it play out before your very eyes, because here's the deal, right? You get the coach's approach to said thing. You get the fighter's approach to said thing, the corner person's approach to the set thing, the promoter's approach to the set thing, in different arenas, in different settings, in different lighting, just all the different nuances. And it's, again, like a renaissance. And we almost get to see Picasso, when we see the Martinez brothers, right? Gio and Boogie, and the litany of others. You compete in the it's like you get a front row ticket. I can pay to watch Picasso paint a masterpiece. What are we even talking about?
Yeah, that's totally it really is all we needed though was the right catalyst, because of watching the Picassos do their thing, but in a high school gymnasium, it's not, it doesn't get those asses in every 18 inches, and so just that Metamoris was able to bring that was so important. It was so huge because of it. What there is something to, this feels like I'm at a professional sporting event. And I feel that was the thing that was lost within our sport. So I feel even the ADCCs of yesteryear were all in like these college gyms or something like that. It was like they'd have to pull out the bleachers, and like that was just what it was. But the sport definitely deserves so much more than that. And so in order to get people to watch these Picassos do their art, it really did require that kind of that little extra something. And so shout out to Metamoris.
Yeah.
You did good work. You served your purpose here.
Absolutely. Now, somebody that's doing work over in the comment section, chiming in over from Twitch, from the UK, in fact, is our good friend DJ Yannick, and he says, hello from the UK. According to Woods, good to see you. I hope all is well. I'm currently watching from the hospital. Oh no, my little lad has an operation today. He's still tuning in though. And a question for Joey. Well, first off, we hope everything will be fine with your wee little one. He'll be fine. He's a champion. But he says a question for Joey. Hi there, Joey. My question is, what is your choice of socks that you chose today, and was that a difficult choice to make? What color are they? And if you are so willing, could we see them? Thanks.
I'm actually going barefoot right now.
Same.
I'm raw dogging with the feet. So no socks, easy decision. Try to be barefoot as often as possible.
Yeah, that's the life of a jiu-jitsu practitioner, right? Yeah. Like you like some sandals
/ hippie, trying to ground as much as possible as well. More and more, the idea of barefooting in different areas is becoming more and more exciting to me. I've done a couple of hikes totally barefoot, and yeah, like definitely getting your bare feet on the ground while you're just living outside or living life. It's an important thing.
Yeah. No, 100%. Now, talk about grounding, right? One of the cool things, and I think this is where we kind of like really got to know each other. There was a special place in this LA Jiu-Jitsu community, and that is the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club. For the time that it was a convergence. It was like neutral ground. Talk about grounding, right? There was neutral ground. It didn't matter what your lineage is, what your belt was, what your experience level was, but it was a special place to all of us here in the Southern California Jiu-Jitsu community. Heck, people were driving all the way from like San Diego and out of state to do this, right? So how did that start?
So actually, like the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club started because Eric and I were starting to train more and more, become more and more like friends with more people. And yeah, I remember like something after EBI 3, right? Competing in it and recognizing like, because Eric had competed in EBI 1 and 2 at the time, and I was in EBI 1 and 3. And so we were like, wow, like we're starting to compete in these kinds of tournaments. What can we do to start training more? And then we're like, do we open up a gym? But like, we still don't want to, we neither one of us had any money at that time. And B, also like, it was just like, well, like we still want to train at Jacques all the time. Like, what do we do? And so somewhere down the line, the idea of creating a jiu-jitsu gym within a house became apparent. And then so like just synchronicity after synchronicity, like the idea of that came to be. And then Eric's parents owned an additional home that they were renting out. Turns out that the prior tenants, literally like days after us talking about, man, if we had a gym in a home, like days after talking about that, the tenants that were living there, they found out had turned the house into a grow operation, which his parents weren't happy about. They got kicked out. So now they were looking for new people to live in the house to pay rent. Eric and I are like, all right, we'll do it. And so we moved in. We bought a bunch of mats because 10th Planet Rain had just gone out of business. And so Rain was Mark Munoz's school. And so all the mats that we brought into the house had been trained on by UFC legends, Lyoto Machida, Anderson Silva, like all these people had been on these mats. And so those were the mats that we had brought over to the house. And so it was like, all right, like come to the house, friends. We're just like, doing some open mats with these, like with what's going on. And then like the idea of maybe doing some like seminars happened. And then it was like before we had even moved in officially, right? Like let's say our move-in date was April 1st. It's like March 23rd, but we, it's Eric's parents' house. We have the keys. We're kind of getting set up in the house. And I remember because we lived right next to Jean-Jacques Academy beforehand. Like I lived right on Etowanda. So
Uh-huh.
like when they'd come into town, would stay at our house or stay at the apartment just so they can like be really close to Jean-Jacques. And it was also kind of like in that halfway point. It's not far from downtown LA. A lot of our friends were 10th Planet, so it's not that far from HQ either. And so Richie Boogeyman Martinez hit us up. It was like 10 at night. And he's like, hey guys, like I'm in LA right now, like looking for a place to crash. Would it be all right if like I stayed at your apartment? And we're like, dude, we don't live at that apartment anymore, but we're in a house nearby. Come over, we have an idea. And so he came over. We had like all the mats set up, and we're like, dude, do you want to do a seminar tomorrow morning? And so he came to the house at 10 at night, and then 10 in the morning, like we have a seminar 10 in the morning. And so we just blasted it out on social media of like, yo, like open mat with Richie Martinez. Boom. Like I think like 15 people showed up. And so we're like, okay, we're on to something. And then like all these crazy things like showing us we were on the right path happened. We made a couple of social media posts. Joe Rogan had commented on one of it.
Yeah.
Like, man, what a great idea. And we're like, oh shit, we made it. Joe Rogan has commented on our post. And then almost like I think 1 or 2 weeks after Richie had done a seminar at the house, Gary Tonin was in town to compete and do some seminars. And at that time, Eric was working at a hotel. And so I guess Jeffrey Chu, Gary's, I guess, manager or whatever, reaches out to Eric because Eric was working at a hotel like right before that and was like, hey man, like, could you set us up with like a deal at one of your hotel rooms? And Eric's like, oh, actually, how about you stay at our house? And would Gary want to do like a seminar? And I guess he had a seminar that had just fallen through. And so then like a week after like Richie had done his seminar, we then had Gary Tonin come and do a seminar, and Gordon Ryan was actually with him, but wasn't Gordon Ryan at the time. He was and it was just so like interesting to see all that in retrospect. So yeah, Gary Tonin and Gordon Ryan had then come over to do 2 days of seminars, and it was just like this crazy thing that like the house was totally packed. We had them do 2 days, and we still hadn't even moved out of the apartment that we were in prior. We were just like scrambling to get stuff, and we hadn't even officially moved into this house yet things were starting to happen. And so we initially had the house as it was a jiu-jitsu Airbnb where people from all over the world, because we were in Southern California, would come to compete in all the big tournaments. And so they would stay with us. They'd be able to train. And yeah, we've had like awesome people come, like JJ Wilson, who just won his Bellator fight. He stayed with us. All sorts of other people have done seminars. I said Richie, Gio, Gary. Man, like I'd give you a list of people that have done seminars, but like I'd just be afraid I'd miss out on so many amazing people. But as I said, that was just the catalyst of us starting. We hadn't even officially moved into the house yet, and we'd had Richie and Gary do seminars. Joe Rogan had commented on our social media. So like before even moving in, things were happening. And yeah, like the house just became this really cool training ground for people of all over any given time in an open mat. People from gyms all over the place would be at the house. And it was also cool that we'd be able to give people really cool jiu-jitsu experiences because we had connections with Jean-Jacques, we had connections with Eddie. And so we had one person came over to the house. Like it was like one day they trained at HQ with Eddie. The next day they trained at HQ with Jean-Jacques. And then like the next day they were at Crone School where Hickson was teaching. So, you know, it was like, all right, we got like Eddie Bravo, Jean-Jacques, Hickson Gracie. I was like, all right, did you enjoy your LA jiu-jitsu experience? Now back off to Europe you go. And so,
it's like a fucking tour guide. My goodness. Could you get a better week of 4 days of training? I don't think so.
In between time, like the house that you're staying at, you're also getting a bunch of training as well. So it was definitely a very exciting time. Yeah.
That's very smart. And it's it's almost a non-traditional take on that euphemism of build it, they will come. Hell, the house is already built. So if you rent it, it will come. And I just find it fascinating that the catalyst was like, oh, grow house. That was amazing. I mean, I guess green turns green, right? Like that's DJ Addict says, good choice, gents. My lad is having a wire removed from his arm. He broke it last year. All is well. Just wanting to go home, waiting to go home. Thanks for answering my question. Oh, of course. And again, just all positive vibes to your little lad, right?
100%. Yeah. Get well soon.
Now, obviously, level 2 Wim Hof method instructor. How does obviously you mentioned Joe Rogan commenting on the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club. For me, my kind of introduction to Wim Hof was him on the Joe Rogan podcast, right? On JRE. So when did you kind of start to listen and kind of lend your ear to the trainings of the great Wim Hof?
Yeah, so it all started with jiu-jitsu. So Hickson Gracie came, he did a seminar at our academy at Jacques. And so then afterwards, like even Eddie was there, but there was all this Q&A. And so Hickson talked a lot about the importance of breathing during it, right? He taught us awesome jiu-jitsu techniques, but then he talks a lot about breathing, and he talked about his yoga instructor, a man by the name of Orlando Connie, who at the time created a form of yoga. It was called Gymnastica Naturale back in the day, but now it's called Biogymnastica. And like he created this. And I remember like Hickson talking about like, the animal movement and the breathing. And he talked about it on Joe Rogan's podcast as well. But I remember in my head being, man, I'd love to learn from this Orlando Connie guy. And then once again, crazy synchronicities. And that's what I try to follow in life, are just moments where, is it God like hey, Joey, like, here's a sign. Are you going to follow it? And about, it was like a week after the seminar, I get a call from a friend saying, hey, I have a friend coming from Brazil, needing a place to stay when he comes to America for a few months, because we had the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club. Would it be possible for him to stay with you? And then he started talking a little more about him. And then I found out that he was the head instructor of the Orlando Connie Institute in Rio de Janeiro. And so his name is Marcelo Barros. And so Marcelo, he taught us like a lot of the biogymnastica, the animal movements. But the thing that like really resonated was all the breathing. He talked so much about like all the breathing. And so like really learning that you can breathe into all these different breathing muscles, these different breathing exercises that can make you feel a certain way. And so I was like, wow, this is totally amazing. Loving all this. And then just for fun, me, Eric, Marcelo, our good friend Alejandro, because we had a pool at the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club, and during winter, it would get really cold. And so it was kind of like during our fall winter time, it was like almost like the challenge of getting in the pool, getting out. And then it was like, all right, get in the pool, stay in for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. And then that was like we'd invite other people who came to the house to do that as well. Also because Hickson Gracie would talk about that at the same seminar that he was doing when he taught at Jacques. Someone asked him, because like right in the documentary Choke Required Jiu-Jitsu Viewing, we see Hickson doing all the breathing techniques he does. And we also see him jumping in the cold rivers of Japan and just enjoying it. And somebody asked him, like, why do you do that? He gave the coolest answer ever. He goes, I do it to embrace death. And so I remember like, wow, like need to embrace more death in my life. And so that's like kind of the catalyst of why we were jumping in the pool, just as this fun challenge to see how long we can do it. And then I think it was Marcelo who showed us the Vice documentary with Wim doing all the things where he brings a reporter up Mount Snežka and in the Czech Republic. And I remember watching that and being, holy shit, here's a guy doing what we're doing, but there's like way more method to it. And like he's bringing it to the scientific community, being, hey, test me. And they're being, yeah, like awesome stuff is going on in your body while you're doing these breathing techniques, while you're exposing yourself to the cold. So then it became, here's me, like I'm already working on breathing like mechanics. I'm already jumping in the cold water. And now I'm watching a guy do it at just such a high level, and then seeing scientific documentation of like, yeah, this is doing really good stuff for you. So I was like, okay, I need to learn more about this. And then almost like once again, another synchronicity, like a month later, I go to a Tony Robbins event, and Wim Hof was one of the speakers on the Sunday. I didn't go because of Wim was there, but it was like, oh shit, like here's that guy Wim Hof I just saw. We do the breathing exercise at the event. And I remember I was able to hold my breath for well over 2 minutes with no problem at all. And then I also felt great. So it's like, okay, this breathing technique is clearly doing something. And so then I started going down the path of like, what do I need to do to become an instructor? And started like, the process of becoming a Wim Hof method instructor, and really just like honestly using a lot of the connections made through the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club, because if I recognized, man, there's totally a connection between what's going on with this Wim Hof method and just jiu-jitsu, right? Like Rickson Gracie was the person that was already doing these things. I might as well, hey, I'm doing like that Rickson Gracie stuff, but it's the Wim Hof method. And so using just connections through the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club of like, hey man, like, going to friends from all over. Like I think, my friend Drew, Andrew Murillo over in
Yes.
Marietta. I think that was the first place I did a workshop. Later reached out to Zach Muslaney and J.M. Holland over in 10th Planet Bethlehem, did a workshop out there with them. And so just really just like using these jiu-jitsu connections of like, hey, would your students be interested in this? And like that's what really started it going. And then it's taken on a whole life of its own. But yeah, like the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club, doing the breath work with Marcelo in our mat room, jumping into our cold pool, and then also just sometimes like after training, like when I started getting into the Wim Hof method, I would just bring ice over because Eric and I would alternate on days of teaching classes at the house. And so on the days he would teach, I would get a bunch of ice, come back, train a little bit. And I was like, hey, if anyone wants, I'm doing ice baths in the back. And so just like started it. And it all like really did start out of the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club. But like it was like it's taken on this whole life of its own. But it was all like through jiu-jitsu.
Now I mean, it's funny because you've seen the YouTube videos of like people, I believe it in, Eastern Europe, they plunge into the water. And I think Jan Blachowicz, for the last fight with Israel Adesanya, he basically did it. And, there was just a lot of people weren't, I guess, awoken to the theory, right? But
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's some trepidation there. But in terms of like again with life conditions, once people, because there's something that happens, there's something visceral that happens, right? When somebody does it, and they might have some preconceived notions, or might even be timid and what have you, or just even like all jazzed to get in it, get into the ice bath, and then realize that they achieve, like you said, just in the Tony Robbins, environment, right? With Wim, you held your breath for 2 minutes, which is again an amazing trait for anybody to have, jiu-jitsu or otherwise, right? And then this happens. Like, what are the transformations that you've seen, as a instructor?
Yeah. So like what a lot of people don't realize is that because like with the Wim Hof method, the thing that's very easily seen, as you mentioned, is the ice bath. People come to the workshop because there is like this, you have preconceived notions, and then to kind of challenge those and kind of change them. Because I know for me, I grew up thinking that if you were ever to fall into say thin ice or something like that, that within a few, like maybe a minute or two, you'd be dead. That's it. But then to realize like, no, you can go into cold water and not only not be dead, but also not freak out, which is like, people's natural reaction. Of course, you go into this fight or flight state, but you can go in and just be, oh, I'm okay. In fact, I can just meditate in here and be fine. And so, I mean, that's the thing. We'll kind of get to that where like, that's the thing that people can easily see. But what blows people's mind is the breath work. That people don't realize that. And like, yeah, once again, you can see people holding their breath for 2 minutes. Joe did it on when Wim had him on, when Wim was on Joe's podcast. Joe, I think, also held his breath for well over 2 minutes. But also like you do a few rounds of that and it takes you to places. It's once again been shown that through like brain scans of people of like Wim doing the breathing in an MRI, that you go into different parts of your brain. So you go into these super deep meditative states, the mental chatter stops. And so it allows room for like intuition to happen, where those little things that but your mental chatter kind of talks you out of maybe moves you're supposed to make. And so it allows for that to really come through very loud and crystal clear. It's also, once again, great for your body, great for your immune system. That's like really the thing that's gotten the breath work popular, was that Wim did it. He injected himself with E. coli, an endotoxin, with the expectation that he'd get ill, but nothing happened. And then he showed that other people can do that as well. So that was like the big thing with it. And that's once again the thing that you can show people on paper. But then people have also had like DMT-esque experiences. I know I have, where you go into a whole different realm and then you come back and you're, oh yeah, I forgot that I was here as a person. And then also like there's like emotional release. People that have been holding on to these things forever, like cry for the first time in years. I had one person, it was in Slovenia. The guy's name, like, you know, like, I'm not like, I don't tell like anybody, like the guy's name was Vlad and he was a Vlad. You know, like someone's like, oh, his name was Vlad. You have a very preconceived notion of that person.
Yeah.
This guy was that. And we like were doing the breathing, and then like afterwards I asked like if people had any experiences, and he was like saying that like, yeah, he's like, my whole life was all about being the best at sales, being the best athlete, being the best all this. He's like saying all these things that he was like all my life was about that. And then he stops and he's, but I never took the time, and he starts crying and he's like, I never took the time to love myself. And like this Vlad just like breaking down like in this moment. And I was like, wow, like that's really the power of what this breath work is. And so like, you know, like it unlocks all these different kinds of moments while also being really like healthy for you, while also allowing you to go into these deep meditative states. It allows these powerful realizations, allows for people to release these emotions that they've been holding on to their whole life, and then relook at how they've been looking at life. Oh, wait a minute, I'm always trying to be the best, but like, oh, it's because of like my parents didn't love me a certain way. It's like, oh, that's how they showed love. Like you only get love if you win. And so, you know, to see people like, oh, wait a minute, I can just love myself. I can just be a little bit more free within my body. And so like, that's like the breath work component of it. And then as you mentioned, also the ice bath, because of people come in with these preconceived notions that you can actually keep yourself calm, and your body does go into fight or flight initially. But so it's like, I look at it as like this kind of combining of that like yin and yang energy of surrender and control, where there's the aspect of you need to go in and you need to surrender because it's going to take you on a little bit of like a journey. You're going to go into that fight or flight state a little bit. But then you also need that aspect of control where you're controlling your breathing, because if you just let it, you're going to go too deep in that fight or flight state and you're just going to jump out of the water. You're going to flee the water. But if you can gain a little control of your breathing while surrendering the rest of your body, you're going to see that you can stay calm in that ice bath. And so through the breath work, I've seen transformations of people like that, that character Vlad, that really like, oh wow, like I just needed to love myself. That's a very common thing. And then also with the ice bath of just seeing people, because you also can see how people react to stress when they're in that ice bath. There's been people that will get in the ice bath and like you can see are like terrified and come down. And then there's also, man, I've seen people get in that ice bath, and a lot of times it's people that maybe have been to prison before or were in the military, because it's fight or flight, right? The sympathetic nervous system's response, fight or flight. And I've seen people get in there and they go to a place where I'm like, because I'm always like looking people in the eye while they're going through it. And it's this feeling of, oh, this guy wants to kill me right now. And like, I can feel that. And so, but then once again, they can calm that. And then you see them go into that Zen state. And so to see people's reaction to stress, and most people, it is just like freaking out for like maybe a couple of seconds, but then to see them control their breathing and to control, like, oh, I can control when my body feels like the situation's overwhelming. I can breathe a little deeper. I can tune into my body, use my sense of interoception of what am I doing in my body? Am I showing fear physiology right now? Maybe I can just relax these little things a little more. And you see people go through that whole process while they're in that ice bath, even if it is just for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or the very occasional 10 minutes, depending on what kind of workshop you do with me. But yeah, just like to see that whole process play out is a very powerful thing. And then it's this constant reminder that we do have control over how we react to things. And I think that's like the biggest, most important thing that I think that's presented in these workshops is that life's going to happen. As we mentioned before, that it's so easy to look at everything with those like, you know, rose-colored glasses where it's all just love and light, but you're not looking at, you know, these scary aspects of life. But like the thing that we show in the workshops is that, I'm going to put you into a stressful situation. I'm not going to just talk about love and light and then not confront you with anything. That there's an element of there's confrontation in this workshop. You will be at your body's pinnacle of fight or flight. When you go into water that cold, every instinct in your body is fight or flight maximum. But then at fight or flight maximum, you can actually bring it down. And there's a story I always like to tell in workshops because it's a thing that happened at one, that there was a gentleman who'd had a heart attack in the past. And so he was always, obviously wanted to be cognizant of what's going on as he enters an ice bath. So he's just being very aware. So he's wearing a heart rate monitor throughout the workshop. And before even getting into the ice bath, so he's wearing the heart rate monitor and I can see what his heart rate is on his phone. And so before getting in, it's already at 120. It's not dangerously high, but it's still like somebody who's stressed out about what's going to happen. He gets into the ice bath and his heart rate jumps up to about 160. Once again, not dangerous, but very elevated. Clearly somebody going through some kind of internal fight or flight response. And then externally, you can see all that. You can see the short, shallow breathing, the physiology of, right? You're breathing like that, your body's like that. Of course, your heart rate's going to be at that level.
Yeah.
I keep people in there for a maximum of 2 minutes in my fundamentals workshops. And so he starts gaining control of his breathing, taking longer, deeper inhales, longer, deeper exhales. And it's at first a process going from to, and then before you know, within 2 minutes, I watch as his heart rate goes from that 160 when he first jumps in down to 150, 140, 130, 120, down to by the time he gets out in 2 minutes to 80 beats per minute. So that within 2 minutes, you can be in a situation that caused you to go into fight or flight. You can be in a situation that triggered you, but by having that awareness within your body, by controlling your breathing, having that awareness that you can actually get yourself calmer inside of a stressful situation than you were beforehand when you were just thinking about it. And so that's what I love about the ice bath. I find, and you can see people have those big recognitions of, wow, I can control what's going on. I can feel a certain way, but then I can gain a level of control of my own nervous system.
Man, that's amazing. That's amazing. And it really, kind of strikes me because my dad unfortunately passed away of a heart attack, and I'm like, that could be me. So, man, I'm gonna try this damn method out. I'm gonna seek you out, my friend. But that's not a bad. I mean, that's been a long road for a former footballer of a team that didn't do so great.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Joey, they're on your journey and your path, with everything that you're doing. Obviously, there had to be people that have helped and attributed to the person that you are today. So without further ado, take as long as you like. Let's get some shout outs out of the way, my man.
Yeah, well, obviously, we've already given shout outs to Jacques Machado, Eddie Bravo, and Brian Peterson, all my jiu-jitsu instructors of the past. Also best friends, Eric Medina, Andrew Murillo also got shout outs already, for, just also being on the process of being there with me at the LA Jiu-Jitsu Club, helping me as far as doing the Wim Hof method stuff. And then just also, my personal development world people, just as I mentioned, working with Evolving Out Loud, Kyle Cease, who's that was that's the company I'm currently working at, and just being in the personal development world, every day, where before it was, I work a job that I don't really like. Maybe I have some hobbies that empower me. And then once in a while, I come to an event that really tries to shape how I look at the world. And now that's my job. That's that's where I'm spending most of my time, most of my awareness. Obviously Tony Robbins, Wim Hof, just also in that personal development field. Also my amazing wife, meeting also at a meditation retreat, and just, also getting to be there with me, doing this work, really helping me out in just a giant way. My family, obviously, my parents, my siblings, really helped shape who I am as well. Just really getting to be, man, I feel like I hit the lottery as far as, the life I lived, was having parents who loved me, care, shaping me a certain way, siblings who were all very successful in their own right. And so just being able to grow up with that, just, we all get along very well. And as I said, just getting to meet just such amazing people along the way. And man, these are the people that have really helped shape it. I'm sure there's a million people that I'm missing along the way. But yeah, man, like it's been a very fun road. Also, shout out to Marcelo Barros for showing me just these different breathing techniques and everything like that. But yeah, definitely been blessed with a lot of amazing people.
I love it. I love it, man. It takes a village, it definitely takes a village. And that's a hell of a strong village that you got, obviously. But for people to connect with you and become a part of your village, where can they find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, so you see my first and last name right here. You have it very well done. Joey, Hauss, the last name. And you can visit that, joeyhauss.com. That's my website. At Joey Hauss on Instagram, Joey Hauss on Facebook, Joseph Hauss on TikTok. Somebody else took it. Joey Hauss on YouTube. But yeah, joeyhauss.com. I feel you'll find most of those things. And then my email address, joey@joeyhauss.com. I make it very easy to find me.
There you go. I know. I like it. I like it. And it's just like Gordon Woods. That's it. One word. Do it. Whatever. Put it in the Google machine. Make it nice, easy. Hopefully not queasy. I'm just saying. But Joey, thank you so much. It's good to see you. Yearn for the days that we can like just converge all safely. But until then, this was amazing. So thank you for doing this. And definitely go ahead and follow Joey in everything that he's doing. But in the essence of following and subscribing to stuff, hey, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And I mean, Joey, you're subscribed to the podcast, aren't you?
I am.
Damn right. So be like Joey. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. But if you don't believe my word or Joey's, and I don't know why you wouldn't, here's Professor Zeta Zhang.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you subscribe.